Hi, here we're going to an area where I find it very, very interesting because you probably personally have experienced that more and more employer gives you testing in selecting employees and give you, like for example, I know more and more that it's a term and condition of your employment that you pass your drug testing. And more there are companies that give you a propensity test. What kind of personality test. And of course their reasoning is that more and more jobs you're working as a project team, therefore you have to have the personality that belongs in that group. And I want you to know that originally the testing was only allowed to do if it was related to the performance of your employment. So if you were working for a bank, the only testing they were allowed to give you is math and not English or something else. So it's very, very interesting. So here we come into a time where more and more employers are using testing in selecting you as an employee, and not necessarily because you qualify for the job, but there's a lot more than that. And one case that really was very interesting was the Soroka case in 1991. Target stores hire some security officers, and as you know, we have securities in parking places, we have security all over today. And one of the things is that if somebody gets hurt in any of these situations, the person has control to do something about it. The logic behind is this: if the alternative is cheaper than the injury caused, then the employer or the other person or the hospital or wherever you're going, or the bank, will be responsible for the injury. The alternative has to be cheaper. If the alternative is more expensive than the injury, then the employer or the other person will not be liable. Really bottom line, that's what it is. So here come the Target stores. They are hiring some security officers, and next thing you know, they want people that have good judgment. They want people with emotional stability. They want people that are diligent and committed to their job as a security. Now, you have to remember that to have somebody that are emotionally stable with the high divorce rate, they might ask you a question: are you going through a divorce? And you might not get a job, because while you're going through a divorce, as an attorney, I know it's a very, very emotional situation. So all the applicants might take a test, and they call a psychic screen test. It's a psychological test, or it's a personality test, or it's a behavioral test. And they just want to be a security guard. It's not something that it's, you know, any profession where they have to make big decision about, you know, somebody's life, like a doctor. So some of the test questions related to religious belief, and other questions concern sexual orientation. Soroka and two other applicants, the plaintiffs in this case, found the test was objectionable and brought a class action suit in a California state court against Dayton Hudson, who was the security employment. The suit challenged the test as violating their privacy rights. I mean, sex orientation, you know, and belief in their religion, and it's something that, you know, wait a minute, what does it do with us to be committed, to keep an eye, to make sure that, you know, like you think of the airport, the security have a job to make sure that you don't have any tools that might hurt somebody. So definitely they felt that this was a privacy right problem. The court found the target use of the test was reasonable, and the plaintiff appealed. So the trial court, remember again, the trial court has a tendency to make decisions as consequence, you know. Don't do to others what you don't like to be done to you. The appellate court usually has a tendency to make decision more for the good of society, and also, you know, the prevailing culture to protect. So the issue here was, the target use of the test violate the job applicant's right of privacy? Well, the trial court says no, because I guess if you are an ethical person and you're a religious person and you go to church on Sunday and you read the Bible, and you are pretty much conformist to the prevailing culture, then we can trust you. In any other religion or any other way of you wanting to do having sex, I guess it's not acceptable because, quote, you're not, according to our norms, you're not normal. The reasoning on the court then says Target has an interest in employing an emotionally unstable person. That was their reasoning. That was their argument. Testing applicants about their religion, beliefs, and sexual orientation does not further their interest. And the court says, as much as I understand that you want somebody emotionally unstable person, the fact of their sexual orientation, maybe religious belief has something to do, but not sexual orientation. And therefore, more court target must demonstrate a compelling interest, must establish that the test serves a job-related purpose or satisfy the nexus of job-relatedness requirement. And the court goes into more like you're really, for you to say that sexual orientation is very important because it demonstrates that you're not emotionally stable, you have to have a lot more evidence, some kind of surveys that show that, you know, people that have different sexual orientation from what the normal, whatever the normal is, they might not be stable. Again, legal and ethical issue here. Does the testing serve a job-related purpose? All the times you have to remember that. Whenever you're going through a test, the question that they're asking you, you know, whether you committed a crime, whether you committed, when would you get, when I read the application where they're asking when is the last time you had sex, or with whom did you have sex, or where, you know, I mean, what is going on here? I guess to find out if maybe the father of the pregnant lady is the married father. I have no idea. But the questions on that application has to serve a job-related purpose. There has to be a purpose that relates to the position that you're going to hold. Is the intrusion justified? And then, of course, if the questions are there, are they justified? Is there reasonable, is it a reasonable demand, or is it a reasonable question? And that means, does the 55% of the population or the society at large believe that that is justifiable? Because sometimes I might not agree with the 55%. And when I do not agree with the 55% or 51% or 59%, that means, according to the law, I'm unreasonable. And to be reasonable, that means that I was reason to believe that it's good for us to do it a certain way. Should the privacy right of a job applicant be given the same consideration as the privacy rights of employees? If somebody's applying for an application for a job, do they have the same privacy right as the employees have? Because often enough, as an applicant, you are required as a term and condition of the position to be tested for drugs. However, there are cases that if you were not tested for drugs when you apply for the job, and then later on the employer changes his mind or has a new policy or sends out a memo that randomly you will be tested for drugs, that can be a legal action under the American with Disability. Often people are taking legal drugs, or because they have asthma, or because they are depressed, or because they have cancer, or because, you know, different things that the employee does not believe the employer should know. And of course, if you have legal drugs and you're going to be tested for illegal drugs, then you have to let the employer know what kind of drugs you're taking. And somehow today, because of our information or knowledge, we know from the drugs people take what is their disability. And therefore, under the American with Disability, you're protected. So employees' privacy right are the same as the one that apply to it. And you see that there are situations where employees seems to have a little bit more privacy right than an applicant. But is that ethical? We're going to discuss this more on the board. I really would like to read your point of view from an ethical or a legal perspective. Thank you.